And the meaning of the word, which is the things it denotes in reality, does not go beyond reality in any given way. It puts reality in an orderly format so that we can deal with it. All it does, there's nothing mystical, supernatural, or transcendental about it. Nothing mystical, natural, supernatural, or transcendental. Very, very real, very objective thing to say, chair. The meaning, the signified, and here we go, this is Wittgenstein nonsense here. The meaning of something, the signified, completes the word, the sign. So that there's a sign, it's just the physical manifestation. And then there's a meaning, there's a disconnection between the two. There's obviously disconnection between the two, because if you say a cow in America, you mean something very different than if you say cow in some tribal society where cow means lightning. But that should be beneath the notice of philosophers. It should be way beneath the notice of philosophers. And I might add, it is. Then he says, for example, the word dog gets its meaning from an actual dog, which might be sitting in front of us, or we may have the idea of a dog that could be sitting in front of us. But I will interject here and say, if we didn't have any clue what four-legged furry animals and dogs themselves looked like, and you said to me dog, it would mean nothing. And if it's the first time I've ever seen the dog, and you mention dog but don't point at it and identify this is what I mean by dog, then dog has no meaning to me. It's a connection within reality. Words take meaning and shape inside of reality. They don't transcend reality, but he's about to talk about that. Let's get back to this. Quote, "This is not supernatural in the sense of God projecting His goodness onto the world, though that is a prime example of another transcendental relationship. Now, I don't know what the hell that sentence means. Go over it 5 times, and Azrienoch himself doesn't know, I'm sure. But he's trying to concretize what transcendental means. He says it's not in any way mystical or supernatural. But a good example of a transcendental relationship is the example of God projecting His goodness on the world. Who else but a postmodernist would use a floating abstraction to try to concretize and explain? More so, the transcendental relationship is a metaphysical, a cognitive structure, a worldview. I just pause to say that metaphysics is the philosophy, the branch of philosophy that deals with existence. It's a very short subject. It says A is A, existence exists, consciousness is conscious. And then you're done with metaphysics. Very, very short subject. He here groups, he identifies it is a metaphysical, cognitive structure, worldview. A cognitive structure is epistemic in nature. And metaphysics is separate from that. And a worldview is epistemic in nature, although a sense of life and your idea of what the universe is like, is it a benign universe or a malevolent universe, will affect your worldview. But, well, suffice it to say, he completely misunderstands the interaction between the mind and reality. But that's no surprise to us, is it? The dog and its word seem more natural in their transcendentalism. No meaning there. But, as if he said something, he continues, the relationship between a word and an object or thought is a transcendental relationship nonetheless. And we see obviously that it's not. On to page 8. We're still on part 4 now, little paragraph 4. This is a single paragraph by itself. We want to believe the myth of reality. How does he know reality is a myth? We want to believe the myth of reality. Who is it that we are, and what is it to believe? Why would we want to believe? What is it to want? If we wanting to believe, there's 3 things there, identify things that exist and relationships between them. Presumably there's a reality that constitutes those things and everything around them. but that's a myth. So he says, think from reality, think from reality, think from reality, but reality is myth. That's his sentence opening this part. Continuing, none of us wants the realization that there is only perspective. We want to believe that there's an objective reality we can all view. We don't want to believe that everything is just from our direction. Now, how would you ever know that everything is perspective if you couldn't step back and look at the reality and say, look, he thinks he's got it, but he's just got a perspective. He thinks he's got it, but he's just got a perspective. I think I've got it, but I've just got a perspective. How do I know I've just got a perspective? Because I've stepped out of my perspective and gotten an idea of the entire objective situation. Ass. I'm going to skip down a bit. Christ almighty. Page 65, paragraph, section, subsection, whatever, 36. Whittling ambiguities is a good description of the process of language games, of seeing the context of a conversation. Now, whittling, I know you whittle, if you whittle a stick, take your pocket knife and go like that, just take little pieces off at a time and sharpen it or reduce it or change its shape or whatever. So he wants to whittle away at ambiguities. He says it's a good description of the process of language games, or seeing the context of a conversation. So we want to understand what is the context of a conversation. He asserts that it is basically like whittling ambiguities, just little teeny ambiguous things that cannot be brought down to specific meaning. That is what it means to try to get the context of a conversation. Now, there's nothing ambiguous about context, and there's nothing difficult or transcendental about getting to the meaning of a context. The meaning is the context of the conversation. Now, the context of a conversation, there's nothing ambiguous. There's nothing that we need to whittle down from transcendent stuff to it. The meaning of a conversation, the context of a conversation is, let's look at one. Let's try to get into the ultimately impossible to understand language game going on between two individuals standing on a mountainside in Oregon. One of them's holding a chainsaw and a hard hat, and the other has a clipboard and a hard hat. And what is the context of their conversation? Now, we don't know too much yet. That's all we know so far. But what if I told you that the guy with the clipboard is the chainsaw holding guy's foreman or boss or shift supervisor type thing? So you'd say, okay, they're probably talking about something to do with the job today. But what if I told you that the clipboard carrying guy was following the chainsaw guy around, and the clipboard carrying guy is a government bureaucrat there to administer EPA regulation? That is different. Now, when the two talk, these two gentlemen talk, if they do, their conversation is going to be very different. If the guy's a government bureaucrat from if he's the logger's company owner or whatever. Very different situation. The context is not elusive, it's not mystical, it's not supernatural, it's not transcendental, it is objective and can be identified. But they start off with a premise like, you can never know. Then they go forward and try to investigate things. So, where are they going to get? Continues. We cannot whittle ambiguities if there's nothing public to appeal to. Now, I wish I could say he came back to that thought, but he doesn't. He goes off and he says, if I ask you, can you feel my pain? I'm not asking, can you feel the nerve senses and stuff. What I'm asking is, can you empathize with me? He says, I'm creating a metaphor that begs you to consider how you would feel in my position, right? That's, can you feel my pain? Or can you see how hard this decision is for me to make? Or can you see how important this is to me or something? He says, we're asking the person to consider how you would feel in my position, which is something you can never know, period. You can never know how that person feels. And we might think we know what they feel, but we can never know.